I used to believe my husband adored me. The way he smiled across the table, the way he brushed my hair behind my ear, it all felt real. But that night, during dinner with his colleagues, something inside me shifted. They switched to Japanese halfway through the meal, assuming I couldn't understand. I sat there, smiling politely, as words sharper than knives sliced through my heart. Every sentence revealed who he truly was. My fingers tightened around the glass, my pulse refusing to calm. And yet, I stayed quiet. Listening. Memorizing. Because what he didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this moment all along. Before I continue, tell me your country and the time right now. He called it an important dinner. I remember the way he said it, careful, deliberate, as if this night could change everything for us. I smiled, pretending not to feel the quiet pressure underneath. I spent the afternoon getting ready. My hands trembled slightly while I fastened my earrings, the ones he'd given me for our first anniversary. They felt heavier than usual, like they carried a memory that no longer belonged to us. Still, I told myself to trust him. To believe that the man I loved was still the same. The restaurant was glowing when we arrived, warm light spilling through glass, soft music filling the space between voices. People laughed politely, glasses touched, and everything seemed perfect. For a moment, I felt proud to stand beside him. Then, something changed. Halfway through dinner, his colleagues shifted into Japanese. It wasn't unusual, they all spoke it fluently, but what caught my attention was his tone. The sudden ease in his voice, the laughter that didn't sound like the man I knew. I stayed quiet, pretending I couldn't follow. But I could. Every word. Every laugh. Every careless sentence that peeled something away from me. He joked about how I didn't quite fit in. About how I was still learning the ropes. They laughed, and he laughed with them. At first, I thought I misheard. But as they went on, his words grew sharper, more dismissive. He spoke about me like I wasn't there. About my family. My work. My dreams. All reduced to punchlines. My face didn't move. I smiled the same polite smile. Inside, something broke, quietly, without anyone noticing. The waiter poured more wine. The smell of it turned my stomach. My husband leaned back in his chair, still talking, his hands gesturing freely as though my feelings were invisible. I wanted to stand up. To shout. But instead, I listened. I memorized every word. Because beneath the hurt, something else was forming, something steady, sharp, calm. I realized that if I reacted now, he'd win twice. Once for humiliating me, and once for watching me fall apart. So, I stayed composed. I laughed when they laughed. I nodded when they looked my way. And inside, I started planning my silence. When dessert came, I excused myself. My hands were cold as I reached into my bag. My phone was still recording from earlier, just a harmless habit of mine, or so I'd thought. Now it held something else entirely, proof. I slipped it deeper into my purse and returned to the table. He smiled at me, unaware. That smile used to mean everything. Tonight, it meant nothing at all. The dinner stretched on like a performance I couldn't escape. I kept pretending, each moment a quiet act of strength. When it was finally over, I stood and thanked everyone for the evening. My voice didn't tremble. My husband didn't notice how I avoided his hand as we left. Outside, the air was cold. I could see my breath, soft white clouds vanishing into the night. I walked ahead, my heels clicking on the pavement, every step steady and deliberate. In the car, he hummed softly, completely unaware of the shift between us. I turned my face toward the window and let the city blur past, lights melting into lines of color. He thought he knew me. He thought I was silent because I was weak. But he didn't know the truth. When we reached home, I excused myself quickly, saying I was tired. I went straight to my room, closed the door, and pressed play. His voice filled the quiet. And with it, the certainty that something inside me had changed forever. I left the restaurant early, but not before recording something he'll wish I hadn't. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard his voice again, careless, confident, cruel. The sound played on a loop inside my mind. The recording lay on my nightstand, my phone screen glowing faintly in the dark. It felt like a living thing, pulsing with a truth I couldn't unhear. I picked it up, pressed play again, and listened to the laughter that had once comforted me. Now it made my chest tighten. I stopped halfway through. I couldn't bear to listen anymore. But I didn't delete it. Something inside me whispered, "Keep it." By morning, my eyes were red from crying. I stood in front of the mirror, studying my reflection. I didn't look broken. I looked calm. Detached. Like someone watching herself from far away. Downstairs, the smell of coffee filled the kitchen. He was already there, humming softly, scrolling through his phone as if nothing had happened. "Morning," he said lightly. "You slept late." I nodded, forcing a small smile. "Yeah. Just tired." He smiled back, completely unaware that the ground beneath him had already shifted. We talked about nothing: milk, traffic, weekend plans. I listened to every word, every tone, searching for signs of guilt. There were none. He was comfortable. Safe in his illusion. While he packed his briefcase, I slipped the phone from my pocket and backed up the recording. One copy went to my private cloud. Another to a USB drive I tucked inside my jewelry box. My hands didn't shake this time. They moved with quiet precision. He kissed my forehead before leaving. I let him. Because sometimes, silence protects better than anger. After he left, I sat on the couch for a long time. The apartment felt too quiet, like the air was waiting for something. I pressed play one more time, but this time I didn't cry. I took notes. Word for word. Every insult, every joke, every phrase that cut too deep. I wasn't planning revenge. I was searching for understanding. Why would someone who claimed to love me speak like that when I wasn't supposed to understand? Midday came, and sunlight filled the room. My phone buzzed suddenly. A message. Unknown number. "Do you know what he's really saying about you?" My chest tightened. The message came with an image, blurry, taken in a restaurant I didn't recognize. My husband was sitting there, smiling, leaning close to a woman. They looked comfortable. Too comfortable. My fingers trembled as I stared at the screen. Then another message followed. "You deserve to know the truth." I didn't respond. My thoughts raced, tumbling over each other. Who was she? Why send this to me? I replayed last night's dinner in my mind, the laughter, the sideways glances between him and that woman. It hadn't meant anything to me then, but now it burned with new meaning. I opened the recording again and listened closely, this time to the background. There it was, a faint sound, a woman's voice joining in on the laughter. Hers. The realization hit hard, but beneath it came something steadier, clarity. This wasn't just about words spoken in another language. It was about truth, about how much of my life had been built on illusions I never questioned. I sat up straight, opened a new folder on my computer, and labeled it, "For Me." Inside, I saved the recording, the screenshots, and every trace of evidence I could find. Not for vengeance. For truth. By evening, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: control. Quiet, firm control. The phone buzzed again, one last time before midnight. A single line appeared on the screen. "He's not who you think he is." I stared at the message until the light faded from the phone, my reflection staring back at me in the glass. The words lingered in my mind, cold and certain. And I knew then, this was only the beginning. The next morning, I couldn't ignore the message anymore. It waited on my phone like a shadow, quiet but heavy. I stared at it for a long time before opening it again. The image of my husband and that woman glowed against the screen, his hand resting lightly on her chair, his smile relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in months. My stomach tightened. I told myself it could be nothing. a misunderstanding. But deep down, I already knew the truth. I spent the day pretending. Pretending to work, pretending to focus, pretending that my life hadn't tilted overnight. Every sound in the apartment seemed louder. The clock ticked too sharply. The hum of the refrigerator buzzed like a warning. By afternoon, I decided to do something I'd never done before. I called his office. My voice stayed calm when I asked, "Hi, I'm just checking if he'll be in for dinner tonight." The hesitation on the other end said everything. He's out of town, ma'am. Business trip. Tokyo. Tokyo. The same place the photo had been taken. My throat went dry. When I hung up, my hands were shaking, not from fear anymore, but from understanding. The pattern was forming, piece by piece, right in front of me. I opened my laptop and searched his travel records, our shared account, the company's calendar. He'd been making regular trips every few months, each one urgent, each one ending with him returning a little colder. I started saving everything. Dates. Receipts. Hotel names. Quiet proof that didn't scream, but whispered steadily, "This is real." That night, he called. "Sorry, meetings ran late," he said casually. "You know how it is." I looked at the picture again, at his arm around her chair, and swallowed the tremor in my voice. "I know," I said softly. "Work first, right?" He chuckled. "You're the best." The line went silent for a moment. I could almost hear him smile. "I'll bring you something nice." After the call, I sat in the dark. The city lights flickered outside my window. I wasn't crying anymore. I was listening, to the sound of my own heartbeat settling into something new. Over the next few days, I moved quietly. I checked his emails when he left his laptop open. I found messages, careful, coded ones, filled with work talk that wasn't really about work. I translated them, word by word. They weren't just colleagues. Still, I needed more. I needed to see it. Friday evening, he said he'd be home late again. My voice didn't shake this time. "Take your time," I told him. When the door closed behind him, I followed. The air outside was crisp, the kind that carried every sound clearly. I kept my distance, watching his car from 2 vehicles behind. He didn't notice. He turned left, then right, and finally stopped near a quiet restaurant at the edge of town. The sign above the door was the same as the one in the background of the photo. My chest tightened. He walked inside, checked his phone once, and looked up, straight into the face of the woman from the picture. She smiled, her hand brushing his as they sat down. I couldn't hear their words, but I didn't need to. The way he looked at her told me everything. Not with love. Not even with guilt. But with ease. Like this was normal. I stood there longer than I should have, watching them talk, laugh, lean close. The cold air bit at my skin, but I didn't move. Finally, I turned away. My steps felt heavy, but not weak. I wasn't running from the truth anymore. I was walking toward it. As I reached the car, I looked back one last time. Through the glass, I saw her pass him something small, a folder, maybe. He slipped it into his jacket without hesitation. Something flickered in my mind. That wasn't romance. That was business. And in that instant, I realized, whatever was between them wasn't just personal. It was something much larger. When I drove away, my pulse was steady, but my thoughts weren't. Because if she wasn't just another woman, then what exactly was she? The following week, the pieces began to fit together in a way I couldn't ignore. At first, it had seemed like an affair, painful, personal, and simple in its cruelty. But now it felt different. Colder. Sharper. While sorting through our shared files, I noticed something unusual. There were folders labeled under my name, but I had never created them. Inside were spreadsheets, contracts, and confidential company data. None of it belonged to me. I froze. My husband worked in corporate finance, often bringing work home. But these weren't random reports. They were copies, duplicates of files from his company's restricted database. And the last modified timestamps? They matched the nights he said he'd been working late. My pulse quickened. I didn't want to believe it, yet the evidence stared back like a silent accusation. That evening, he came home humming softly, carrying takeout from my favorite restaurant. "Peace offering," he said, smiling. I forced a nod, pretending not to notice the small flash drive he slid into his jacket pocket before washing his hands. Dinner was quiet. He talked about office politics, promotions, the usual noise meant to distract. But behind his words, I sensed calculation. He was measuring my reactions, the way I held my fork, the way I didn't meet his eyes. After he went to bed, I returned to the study. The computer light cast long shadows across the room. I searched the external drive he'd left behind earlier by mistake. Inside, I found folders labeled in Japanese, company names, project codes, financial transfers. Each click felt heavier than the last. That's when it hit me, the woman from Tokyo wasn't just a lover. She was a business contact. Their connection wasn't emotional, it was transactional. He wasn't betraying only me. He was betraying his company, maybe even the law. My heart raced as I copied the evidence to a secure folder. My hands trembled, but not from fear anymore. From resolve. The next morning, I called my father. He had worked in compliance for decades, a man who understood the weight of silence. I told him only part of the story, about the strange files, about my unease. He paused before saying quietly, "Keep everything. Don't confront him yet. Sometimes truth needs time to protect itself." I hung up, his words echoing in my mind. Days passed. My husband remained unaware, moving through our home like everything was normal. But each time he left the room, I could feel the walls shifting, the thin layer of peace cracking. One night, I heard him on the phone in the hallway. His voice was low, clipped, urgent. I caught fragments in Japanese: delivery, account, transfer, no risk. I stepped closer. He ended the call suddenly, then turned. His smile was slow, measured. "Can't sleep again?" he asked. I forced a small laugh. "Just restless." He nodded, studying me too long. "You worry too much." When he went back to bed, I stood there in the dark, heart pounding. The unease that had been whispering at the edges of my thoughts finally spoke clearly. He wasn't just lying to me. He was using me, my name, my identity, my trust. That night, I didn't cry. I sat at my desk, surrounded by quiet, and began to plan, not for revenge, but for safety. If his choices came crashing down, I didn't want to be buried under them. I opened a document and started writing everything I knew. Every date. Every call. Every suspicious folder. The next time I looked up, dawn was breaking through the curtains. The sky outside glowed faintly pink, soft and calm against the storm brewing inside me. I heard the floorboards creak behind me. He was standing there, half awake, watching me. His voice was smooth. "You've been busy lately." I met his eyes and smiled faintly. "Just organizing." He stepped closer, his tone shifting. "You know, I've always admired how observant you are." Something in the way he said it sent a chill through me. That's when I realized, he already knew. He waited until morning to speak. The sunlight cut across the kitchen counter, cold and clean, while he sipped his coffee as if nothing were wrong. I sat across from him, my fingers resting around a cup I hadn't touched. The silence between us was heavier than any argument could have been. Finally, he looked up. "You've been acting different," he said softly. "Should I be worried?" I met his eyes. "Should I be?" Something flickered across his face, amusement, maybe surprise, but it vanished as quickly as it came. He leaned back, studying me. "If you found something," he said, "you should tell me. Secrets aren't healthy." I almost laughed. The irony was too sharp to ignore. "You'd know about that, wouldn't you?" He smiled thinly. You think you understand what's going on. You don't. My pulse quickened, but I didn't look away. Then explain it. He set down his cup carefully, the porcelain clicking against the counter. Everything I've done has a reason. You might not like it, but it's not what you think. I took a deep breath. You mean it's not betrayal? It's business? His expression changed, just slightly. The calm slipped. You've been listening. The words hung in the air. My stomach dropped. He knew. He knew about the recording. I stayed silent, letting him fill the quiet. He did. He always did. He stood slowly, his tone even. You're smart. Smarter than I gave you credit for. But sometimes it's safer not to know everything. I felt something steady rise inside me. Safer for who? He walked toward me, stopping just close enough for me to smell his cologne, the one I'd once loved, now just a reminder of distance. For both of us, he said quietly. You're not built for what I do. I didn't flinch. Then maybe you shouldn't have built your life on lies. For a moment, his jaw tightened. Then he gave a low laugh. You think you can use that recording against me? I met his gaze evenly. I already did. The silence that followed was absolute. He froze, the color draining slightly from his face. I went on, calm and measured. I sent a copy to your company's compliance officer this morning. They'll decide what to do next. His voice was sharp now, stripped of its charm. Do you have any idea what you've done? Yes, I said. I told the truth. He moved suddenly, pacing across the room, running a hand through his hair. You've made a mistake. You don't understand the politics involved. I stood, matching his tone with quiet steadiness. Maybe not. But I understand what honesty looks like, and I haven't seen it from you in a long time. He turned back to me, his voice low. You'll regret this. I didn't answer. I picked up my bag and walked past him. My heart was pounding, but I didn't show it. At the door, I paused and said, if you ever cared about me at all, stop underestimating me. I left before he could reply. The sky outside was overcast, a storm building in the distance. The first drops of rain hit the pavement as I reached my car. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, the weight of what I'd done pressing in, but beneath it was something else. Relief. For once, I hadn't let fear make my choices. By evening, I received a call from an unknown number. A voice on the other end asked, Are you Mrs. Sato? Yes. This is Detective Mori. We need you to come down to the station. There's been a complaint filed in your name. My stomach twisted. A complaint? Yes, he said quietly. Corporate theft. The line went silent. And that's when I realized, he wasn't done fighting. He was fighting back. The police station smelled faintly of old paper and burnt coffee. I sat across from a uniformed officer who looked too tired to hide his skepticism. His voice was calm but edged with disbelief. Mrs. Sato, are you saying you didn't transfer these files? I'm saying I didn't even know they existed, I replied, my hands folded tightly in my lap. He tapped a pen against the table. They were sent from your home network, under your name. We verified the login. A chill crawled up my spine. My name. My network. My life, turned into evidence against me. He set me up, I said quietly. The officer leaned back, studying me. Your husband? I nodded. He works for the same company. He had access to everything. He didn't answer right away. The hum of the ceiling fan filled the silence. Finally, he sighed and said, If what you're saying is true, you'll need proof. Proof. That word again. It followed me like a ghost. I spent the next few hours answering questions, signing forms, reliving every moment that had led me here. By the time they let me go, the sun had already begun to sink. The city outside looked colder than before, like it was watching, waiting. When I got home, the apartment felt different. His shoes were gone from the door. His suits were missing from the closet. It was as if he'd erased himself overnight. I checked the computer. The folders I'd copied earlier, gone. Every trace of the evidence I'd gathered had been deleted. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty screen, the reflection of my face faint and unfamiliar. Then, my phone buzzed. A message. In Japanese, "You should have stayed quiet." My breath caught. I looked around the room, half expecting someone to be there. The lights flickered once, then steadied. I sat down slowly, my heart pounding. For the first time, fear began to edge out my anger. He wasn't just trying to ruin my reputation, he was trying to make me disappear in plain sight. But I wasn't helpless. I opened my email, searching for anything he'd overlooked. Then I saw it, a backup I'd sent automatically days earlier, hidden in a folder titled Receipts. Inside was the original recording. Intact. It wasn't much, but it was something. I contacted the same detective who had questioned me. "I have new evidence," I said. My voice was steadier than I felt. He met me that evening in a quiet office. I handed him the USB drive. "Listen to this," I said. He's speaking in Japanese, but I can translate every word. The detective played the file. My husband's voice filled the room, smooth, confident, damning. He bragged about transferring data, about using me as cover because she'll never know. When it ended, the detective looked at me differently. "You understand this changes everything," he said. I nodded. "I just want the truth out." As I left the station, the city lights blurred through the rain. My phone buzzed again, a single new message from an unknown number. It was another sentence in Japanese. I translated it automatically, though my hands shook. "You can't win a game you don't understand." I closed my eyes for a moment, steadying my breath. Then I whispered to myself, "Maybe not. But I can end it." When I reached home, the door was slightly open. I froze. Inside, the air felt heavy, like someone had just left, or was still there. I stepped forward carefully, heart thudding. The kitchen light swung faintly, casting long shadows across the floor. And on the table, where my laptop should have been, lay a single object, his wedding ring. Beside it, a folded note. I reached out with trembling fingers and opened it. 3 words. "You'll thank me." 2 weeks passed before I heard from him again. Long enough for the news to spread through his company, an investigation, frozen accounts, quiet whispers about stolen data and missing money. I didn't ask for updates, they came on their own. His name was in the headlines, never directly accused but never clean either. Then one evening, my phone rang. His name appeared on the screen. I stared at it for a long time before answering. "Let's meet," he said. "One last dinner. No games." The words were calm, but the tension behind them was sharp enough to cut. "Why?" I asked. "Because I think we both deserve to end this face to face." I could have refused. I almost did. But something inside me needed closure, not the kind that comes from revenge, but from understanding why everything had broken. The restaurant was the same one where it all began. The same polished floors, the same faint scent of cedar and wine. Even the same corner table. When I arrived, he was already there, dressed neatly, his expression unreadable. "You look tired," he said softly. "I am," I replied. "Honesty takes energy." He gave a faint smile. "Still sharp, I see." For a few minutes, we just sat there, the silence between us louder than the quiet music in the background. Finally, he spoke. "I never meant to hurt you," he said. "I did what I had to. You wouldn't understand." I leaned forward slightly. "You used me. You lied. You tried to destroy me to save yourself. Explain that to me like I might understand." He hesitated, then sighed. It wasn't supposed to go this far. They were going to find someone else to take the fall. I just made it easier. I felt the sting of his words, but I didn't let them show. You made it easier for you, I said quietly. He looked down, his voice softer now. Maybe. But it's over. The company's finished. The deals are gone. There's nothing left. I studied him. His shoulders were slumped, his tone subdued. For the first time I saw not confidence, but fatigue, a man finally facing the weight of what he'd done. I didn't come here for apologies, I said. I came here because I needed to hear you say it out loud. He nodded slowly. Then I'm sorry. For a moment, I almost believed him. Almost. I reached into my bag and took out a small recorder, pressing play. His voice filled the space, the same recording that had started everything. The same laughter, the same careless cruelty. Around us, heads turned slightly. He went pale. Turn that off, he hissed. No, I said calmly. You always told stories about me. Tonight, you get to listen to one. When it ended, he sat in silence. No excuses. No words left to twist. Finally, I stood. This isn't about revenge. It's about truth. You built everything on lies, and now they're gone. I hope one day you remember how it felt to be trusted. He looked up at me, eyes dark. You think you've won? I shook my head. No. I just stopped losing. I left before he could answer, the night air sharp and clean against my face. Outside, the city lights shimmered across the wet pavement, reflections of things that once felt permanent but were never real. For a long time, I stood there, breathing slowly, letting the quiet wrap around me. My phone buzzed once. A new message. Unknown number. It was from her, the woman from Tokyo. We need to talk. He's not finished. I stared at the screen, the glow cutting through the darkness. The story wasn't over. Not yet. Her message came late at night. Just 5 words, he's not finished with you. I stared at the screen for a long moment, unsure whether to reply. My first instinct was fear, the kind that makes your heart thud so hard it's hard to breathe. But underneath that fear was something steadier, resolve. The next morning, I met her in a small cafe near the station. She looked nothing like the confident woman from the photos. Her eyes were tired, her voice low but urgent. I didn't know he was using me, she said, her hands trembling around a cup of untouched tea. He told me it was business. I didn't understand until it was too late. I listened in silence. I didn't owe her forgiveness, but I recognized the exhaustion in her eyes. It mirrored my own. He's gone into hiding, she continued. But he still has contacts, money tucked away. If he decides to run, he'll take everything with him. Including evidence that clears you. I nodded slowly. Then we stop him together. She looked surprised. You'd work with me? After everything? I took a breath. This isn't about you. It's about the truth. About making sure he can't do this again, to either of us. We met secretly for days, trading information, piecing together the full story. She had emails, transfer logs, records he'd hidden through offshore accounts. I had the recordings and documentation from the investigation. Together, the pattern was undeniable. He'd used both of us to build something corrupt, something meant to collapse on everyone but him. Each revelation felt like stepping deeper into a shadowed maze. But this time I wasn't alone. When we finally brought everything to the investigators, they listened carefully. I remember sitting in that sterile conference room, watching the officers take notes, feeling the weight lift slowly from my shoulders. For the first time I wasn't defending myself. I was standing for the truth. The process took weeks. There were statements, follow-ups, interviews. Through it all, he stayed silent, until the day he was arrested at the airport, trying to leave the country under a false name. When the news broke, I didn't feel joy. Not even satisfaction. Just quiet relief. A long, deep breath after months of holding it in. Later that week, the woman from Tokyo called me again. Her voice was steadier this time. "He's gone," she said simply. "I know," I answered. "Do you think we'll ever stop looking over our shoulders?" "Maybe not," I said softly. "But one day, we'll stop being afraid of what we'll see when we turn around." We didn't speak again after that. Some stories end not with friendship, but with understanding. Months passed. I focused on rebuilding, small things first. Morning walks. Fresh notebooks. Learning to cook again, just for myself. There were moments of silence that still hurt, but they no longer felt empty. They felt earned. Sometimes, I'd see couples at restaurants, laughing the way we once did. I'd watch for a second, then look away, grateful that my happiness no longer depended on pretending everything was fine. The past hadn't disappeared. But it had changed shape, into something I could learn from, not live inside. The last message I ever received from him came weeks later, from an untraceable account. It said, "You destroyed everything." I didn't respond. I simply deleted it and turned off my phone. Because he was wrong. I hadn't destroyed everything. I'd started over. The courthouse doors closed behind me with a dull echo. Cold air brushes against my face, and I pause at the top of the steps. The winter light catches the edge of the railing, sharp and silver, as if slicing through the last trace of who I used to be. For a moment, I just stand there, breathing. The world feels quieter now, no whispers, no lawyers, no questions that twist my heart into knots. Only the sound of distant traffic and the rustle of dry leaves across the stone steps. Months ago, I was a woman who believed in promises. I believed in marriage vows, in loyalty, in patience that would heal everything. But I was wrong. Patience without truth is just another kind of silence. I looked down at my hands, no longer shaking. I remember the first day I walked into court, terrified and small. Today, I walked out steady. Not whole yet, but real. He lied. He betrayed. And he thought I'd stay broken. But I didn't. I learned that silence isn't weakness. It's waiting. Watching. Choosing when to speak. Now, I speak for myself. I rented a small office near the station, nothing fancy, just a table, a whiteboard, and a heater that hums too loudly. Next week, I'll start my first class teaching Japanese to women in cross-cultural marriages. Some of them are afraid, just like I was. Some don't even know what they've lost yet. I'll help them find it. It's strange how healing doesn't feel like victory. It feels like breathing underwater until you realize you've reached the surface. There's no applause. Just relief. My phone buzzes in my pocket. For a second, my chest tightens. Old habits die hard. I unlock it. One new message from an unknown number. "You were never supposed to understand." The words hang there, stark against the bright screen. I stare at them for a long moment. Once, those words would have gutted me. I would have needed answers, closure, an explanation that made sense of everything. Now, I don't. I smile, small, but sure. Then I press delete. The message disappears, leaving only my reflection in the black screen. The winter light shifts. I tuck the phone into my coat pocket and step down the courthouse stairs, one slow breath at a time. Behind me, the past closes like a door. Ahead, everything is quiet, and mine.